Dilip, NPCI runs a large number of different payment platforms, which include UPI, IMPS, and so on. You process over 90% of India's digital payments by volume. For a 12-year-old startup, that's an impressive accomplishment.
So it's in 14th year now, by the way.
It's 14th.
It's 14th
Okay.
year now. So, you know, we started, RBI started NPCI precisely to do this job, right? So we are doing what we exactly started for. And when you look at the high transaction processing, you know, while the financial transaction might sound lower, but at the back end, it does more actions, right? You know,
True.
because of when you want to give a great customer experience, instead of adding the complexity at the front end, you add the complexity at the back end, right?
Correct.
So one financial transaction results into actually multiple, maybe 1:10 ratio is what we have right now, APIs with the ecosystem. So we are actually about 15 billion daily APIs with the ecosystem to process the volume what we are doing right now.
That's incredible. And also for all the startups in the room, you're being a profitable startup, not burning money from day one, and which is, you know, I think an incredible achievement. And this last month, you did over, 7.5 billion transactions on UPI, then, 200 plus 300, almost 300 million on FASTag, almost 500 million on IMPS. So how do you keep this going? I mean, you have a lot of partners. How do you manage the entire ecosystem for this?
So NPCI has a critical role. I think the expectations of the government and the regulator from NPCI as a implementing or execution agency is to build the ecosystem. So I think building ecosystem comes naturally to us last 12 years. And while it's a RuPay card, whether it's a toll collection, whether it's a Bharat Bill Pay, whether it's a UPI or Aadhaar, there is a strong and diverse ecosystem which works with us, right? Which is the banks and fintechs and startups, right? And the technology service providers to the ecosystem. And we work very closely with these guys to kind of build what you see, right? It's, today we might be at the center of this payment platforms as a digital public infrastructure, but technically it's the ecosystem that gives the outcome what you're looking at, right? So while the growth has been impressive, lot has to be done, right? Yesterday also I was talking around place and I spoke about 10x growth is still possible, but I think it's the ecosystem which is really the most invaluable in that process.
And that's what it's going to come to, because you're not user-facing. Even UPI, the user-facing is all of the apps in the ecosystem. Similarly, with RuPay cards or with other things, you have payment aggregators, you have card issuers, and so on. So how do you make sure, when you mentioned this was your core strength, that you have this ability to work with the ecosystem and make things happen? But coming to today's topic, we're talking about responsible finance, right? How do we make sure that everybody is sort of dealing with customers' money in a very responsible way, and so on? Just want to get your view on that.
So we work, in responsible finance, responsible innovation. I think these are the two terms which the regulator keeps talking. One of the speech, Deputy Governor himself kind of coined this and said that, the ecosystem should work on a responsible innovation. And, what that means is work with the regulators if you want to innovate, if you want to make changes, and that's how NPCI actually operates on as a regulated entity, because whatever the changes, we have steering committees, we have governance layer, and whatever the changes we want in the platforms, we then get agreed at the ecosystem level, go back to the regulator, take the approval, and then we roll it out from that standpoint. Sanjay, and I think, we spoke about the customer experience. Most of the times, and within the financial services, the design doesn't originate from the customer app, right? The design originates from the back end, right? So the CBS was designed first, the switches were designed first, and then we thought, we have the infra, now let's design the consumer app. I think this somewhere has to change. While UPI did some effort on creating that customer experience what we are looking at. But still it's not truly the gold standard. I think there is a huge scope of improvement to create that responsible finance. I don't think the responsible finance will start unless it starts from the app, right? I think unless the journeys are deriving from the app and coded in the back end and not the other way around. I think that's some mindset change or shift is required to truly move to the responsible finance and also the responsible innovation in that sense.
So I think one of the things you mentioned was around, consumer protection broadly, right? And the question is that because now each financial transaction runs through multiple service providers, always has. It's not, with cards, with even with UPI, with IMPS, it's just very many parties involved in the transaction. And how do you manage consumer grievance redressal in such a complicated space? Because it's no one party that's going to be responsible for it.
So Sanjay, you are aware that, sorry, I have a wallet, but I don't have a cash. So, anybody wants, I can show. See, we used to carry the wallet, cards, identities, and the Nandan Nilekani committee, which was set up by RBI, outlined the ODR framework, right? And today you are aware that we have built the ODR framework on the UPI, on top of UPI and all the other payment systems with the RBI. RBI has given a clear direction to NPCI that this has to be built and it has to be made operational. So it has been made operational now. However, so what happens is there are typically we look at two types of problems, right, in the payment system. One problem is the technical problem, which has been, so as you said, UPI has 10 stakeholders in every transaction. A transaction would get stuck somewhere and not receive the response or whatever it is. And the second is the service delivery issue, right? I paid and I was promised a service and I did not get that service. So ODR deals with both the types of problems. So the first type of problem is actually easier to resolve, right? Because it's we have already built in that ODR that, if you can actually, there is a UPI help or complaint or a resolve.
Just a minute. For those who don't know, ODR is online dispute
dispute resolution, right? Sorry. So technically what happens is, and there are two ways to resolve the way we have designed back on the system, is one is the system automatically discovers that these are the deemed transaction, these are the debit reversal failure transaction, or the incomplete transaction in a simpler language. And system every 2 hours automatically tries to resolve, right? So it goes back and checks कि boss debit हुआ कि नहीं हुआ and credit हुआ कि नहीं हुआ. So if either ways there is a failure, it goes back and correct the position so that the debit and credit is always in sync, synchronized, right? So system does this automatically. System also it also allows the user to raise it from the app. So what happens is today user can raise and get the same result what system is doing automatically. Right. So technically what we are saying is, okay, user can refresh the history and check, and every 2 hours if the transaction is stuck and if ODR has actually resolved it, it will reflect back into his history. Now about 30% of the complaints are getting resolved on the technical side automatically by ODR. Our objective is to go to 75 to 80% in next 1 year, right? What it means is, from a technical standpoint, both P2P and P2M should resolve on its own, right? At least the 80% plus, right? And what it means is the ODR success rate should be 80%. That's True. At a high level. Now come to the service delivery level. So what we do is we generate a non-financial complaint there because there is a need to verify and look at whether it's resolved or not. So I think what we do is we just push it to the issuer, and then issuer has the ability to either verify it or with the straight-through processing, insert a chargeback in the system, because then there is a standard Payment and Settlement Act gives the standard process of chargeback, representation, pre-arbitration, that we have to follow as a clearinghouse any which way.
That is great. So basically the point you're making is that if it's a technical issue, you are aiming to get almost 80% of those issues resolved.
In a year's time.
In a very short amount of time, because while typically payment systems have taken days, I mean, now we're talking hours and minutes, and hopefully next year when we talk about it, we'll say 2 hours में कोई 1 घंटे लाना है, right? Because people expect.
RBI will say real time करना है.
That is in fact the point I was coming to, because
I think we must do it. I'm fully agreeing with
real time.
RBI.
Resolution should happen in real time, right? But
you will write one report with Mr. Nilekini and I'll have to do it any which way.
So, but coming to some of our users, right? I mean, now you also service a whole bunch of users in what we call the financial inclusion space, right? Because you have AEPS, you have IMPS, and you have now the UPI 123 Pay. All of these start to bring in a very new user segment into it, which is very conscious. I mean, they have a bad experience with money. It's a big setback to them, and also a loss of trust. So I want to sort of talk about that user base and how you think about it, and how do we sort of make sure that they have, they have very few negative experiences.
See, this is very hard to respond. But let me tell you what we have been trying. And we have failed multiple times on this because we have still not able to crack this feature phone story.
Feature phone and no phone?
Feature phone and no phone, both. Yeah, I think the customer service has a problem in both segments. The second segment is still manageable, Sanjay, because in the assisted mode, you have the grievance point, right? I'm saying that you have gone back to the touch point, you have withdrawn money, and for some dispute or some transaction which is not completed as per your expectations, or it should have completed, you have a point to raise the complaint. And I think today the BC points do cater to the grievance redressal process. I think the banks have done a great job in dealing with that, at least as far as the assisted mode is concerned. In the feature phone, because it's a self initiated, that's where the problems are, and these are the problems. We tried with, we started with, SMS, even in the IMPS days, did not work. We started with USSD now last few years, I don't think it worked. While we could say that, the telco charges were the problem, but I think the customer experience was the core issue in my assessment. Now we have started 123 Pay, right? And 123 Pay now looks at one of the most powerful channel as voice. Obviously the takeoff is, it's a good progress, but the takeoff is little slower, because again, customer while relying on voice is not only relying on voice, right? So it's not conversational to the full extent. And I believe that the work is on with IIT Madras and the METI on using the Bhashni stack, right, to convert to a fully conversational payments. And I think the moment it goes back to the fully conversational payments and support the multiple Indian languages, I think the trust on the digital payments can be very high, especially on the tier 3 to tier 6.
Great. I just want to give a call out to some of the companies that we have from the Bharat Inclusion Initiative in this space. You have Navana Tech, which has been working in voice, and we have Missed Call Pay, which has been part of the 123 Pay. Right. So I think we're also pushing the same agenda through
we are also
multiple fronts. We work with
this is at the forefront of the RBI and the government's agenda, that how do we get inclusion of this 400 million customers who are on feature phone and not so literate, right? So I think some more efforts are required, Sanjay, to even to go and give a solution at that scale, right? I don't think we are even ready to provide the right solution at the scale what we are looking at, right? So maybe maybe a year, 6 months to 1 year more, to really provide the high quality solution which can be used by large scale population.
So how many users do you have? How do you classify them? Smartphone, feature phone, no phone?
Yeah, so we have 3 worlds now. One is the smartphone, feature phone, and no phone. And that's variety of payment system which are operated by NPCI qualifies to different levels. So you can easily look at the smartphone is about 300 million, clearly, right? And predominantly driven by UPI. The feature phone would be around, in our assessment, about 200 million, predominantly driving up the cash and card cash and ATMs and some of the other assisted mode branch and those kind of models. And could be another 150 million for the Aadhaar and DBT additional. I'm saying, I'm not computing the overlap to the level required.
Sure.
But I think about half the adult population, half or more, 60%, is clearly using the banking services actively on a monthly basis.
That's great. So in terms of inclusion, I mean, I think that's something we all aspire to do.
So I'm saying the family might be higher. I'm saying maybe 80% of the families might be using, but I'm saying on an individual basis about 60% something. That's our number at a high level.
That's excellent. I want to open up for questions in about 2 minutes. So just one last question from me. In terms of tech support, I mean, how do you provide tech support to users? Because you are not the front end, right?
See, technically, the payments has to be like, and our conversation with Mr. Nilekani and everybody, I think, is there a support for WhatsApp? There is no support for WhatsApp. So I'm saying payment should be like a social media. We have to take it to that level. That's what I was talking about initially. There's still a lot more to be done. And there should not be any support required, whether it's a feature phone voice or the apps. And I think you will see that. You will see that in the next 2 years' time. In my assessment, the social media experience for the consumers and the digital payment experience would be fairly similar.
Great. With that, I want to open it up to the audience. Do you have questions? I think the lady in the front. Identify yourself and a quick question, please. Sorry, go ahead.
Namaste, sirs. I'm Anusha.
Please call me Dilip.
Yeah, Dilip. So I have a startup called Kalashcharya, and I primarily use Google Pay and all the UPI systems. Recently, I had been to a small temple town in Tamil Nadu. So you actually gave the answer, like they either have no phone or they are scared to put their bank account details or ATM card details to actually take up the UPI payment apps. So my doubt to you was like, how to convince them to start using the apps. So I think you gave the answer that it should be as easy as social media. So can you?
But it's a $1 billion question actually. No, I mean actually $1 billion question. So it's $1 billion is the answer to that. Right. So I think the one effort is not going to solve, right? So we have been trying to do whatever we could do from NPCI side. One is getting the Aadhaar also as an onboarding option. It is live on majority of the banks. I think the couple of large banks are pending, like SBI. But Aadhaar onboarding, where you don't have to enter anything, right? So you just enter the last 4 digit, it matches from the back end, it fetches from the back end and actually allows the onboarding, because the phone number is fairly seamless. It recognizes all by itself. So I think that if the second factor also starts getting very simple like Aadhaar, that would enable the next, because the debit card may be there, may not be there. That could be one of the issues on that. So that one way we are trying to solve for. The second way I look at it is, see, today a lot of efforts have been taken by the third-party apps, banks app, to onboard this first 300 million users. So I think large investments will be required to incentivize in some mechanism to this next 300 million people to onboard, right? I'm saying there were a variety of efforts, some of the cashbacks, incentives, awards to the high frequency users. So that's why I said, it will require $1 billion to get it. I think these are the 2-3 things which we require. And also the third thing is built up the 400 million, because many of them would follow that feature phone side. So I think we have to make our platform ready for the conversational payments in the multiple Indian languages. So I think these are 3-4 things I believe should be able to get next 300 million people on the digital payments in next 2 to 3 years' time.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
The gentleman on the side, yeah. Yes, I can hear you. Actually, we have a session coming up on CBDC, so we should park it for that.
In the Western world, we are seeing a lot of decentralized finance. Any thoughts on how it would pan out in India, or is NPSI looking or exploring those?
So maybe you should club this question with your CBDC question to the next speaker. I think that would be, because both are very related in that sense, very related. Sure. Because normally what we are looking at is tokenization of the asset in both, right? One side you are tokenizing the currency, one side you are tokenizing the asset. Very similar.
Great. Gentleman at the back. Just identify yourself quickly and the quick question.
Hello. Hi, Sanjay and Dilip. My name is Kapil. I'm the founder of the Vitto, microfinance.ai. We help people who speak local language to avail financial services, be it microcredit or repay the loans. So quick question is that you said 300, 200 and 100 million. We have seen the solution for 300 million people, like Google Pay, Phone Pay kind of things, and 200 million or probably they also...
That's a UPI solution you're talking
Yeah,
about.
obviously, UPI solutions, but there are 200 people might be getting a smartphone journey, and we are relatively for early starter like Google Pay, Phone Pay or Amazon, there is a relatively low barrier to enter.
Oh yeah. The next 200 million is ready, you're bang on.
Exactly.
Next 200 million people have the smartphone, the data connection and the bank account. It's ready.
Absolutely, but these 200 million people require differentiated fintech platforms. New entrant who want to compete with the similar players, there is a higher barrier for them to enter into the market.
What is the barrier?
In terms of getting a UPI app or similar things, from a banking side.
Sorry, what is the problem?
Partnerships with banks.
But the banks are doing the SDKs now, or on-demand SDKs banks have created.
So that is for the bank apps to use that
No,
SDK.
no. You just talk to me. Sanjay, you just get my
sure,
mobile
no, I know
number.
Kapil, yeah.
We'll get you there. If you want to launch an app, we'll be more than happy to help you to get there.
Okay.
Take it, Kapil. Just
Sure.
we'll take care of that.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Question there at the back, last row, and then you. And then I think one more question up front there. So, and with that we'll close. So, yeah, conscious.
I'm just worried the speed limit on Bangalore roads.
Yeah.
Hi, Sanjay, Dilip. This is Shailesh. I am from Gromor Finance. Great revolution in payments, riding on UPI. But at the same time, it is more B2C in flavor, small transaction sizes. But when it comes to B2B, the payment is little different, right? There is a bit of blending with credit. There is a commerce associated to it, exchanges, escrows, stuff like that. So within NPCI, do you look at B2B payments differently?
So BBPS is trying to do something on that sort. So maybe you should touch base with Nupur, right? And you can touch base back with us, right? And we will tell you what we are trying to do on BBPS side on the B2B payments.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Great.
you.
Gentlemen up front, yeah, them. And then I think you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Piyush Singh from Grameen Foundation India. So the wonderful idea is on ODR. What I was thinking that can ODR be also put into the assisted mode like BC channel? Because the reason is that in most of the cases, whenever a customer goes to a BC point and a payment is stuck, as you said, there is like 1 to 10 kind of a API integration. So once it is stuck, it's really tough for that customer to get that money back because there are different layers and APIs involved. And what happens, every time a payment fails, actually exclude at least 5 or 10 people from the digital ecosystem. That's what we have observed. So can ODR be linked in assisted like we have in BBPS?
Yeah, sure. So I think the ODR design, because RBI's mandate is the ODR should be there not only in UPI, but every payment system. So for the AEPS ODR, which is just gone live, the ODR initiation is from the micro ATM, right? So maybe it will take some time to roll this out. But you will see this assisted mode ODR also in AEPS in next 6 to 9 months' time.
Okay, that's really
So that's part of the design already.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you, go ahead, gotta get the mic.
Hello, I'm Shreyan from the Work app. I'm just I'm trying to understand, is it important, like you are working so hard on UPI 1, 2, 3 and all those things. I think those people don't have too much money transactions, that's why they're not going towards the other thing. Like they don't have so much money that don't need to transact in daily life. So why are we working so much hard to make them inclusive on those things?
See, and it's a great question, by the way. See, today, the way we think at NPCI is what we are creating is the rail, right? And, once the rail is available to reach to every Indian in his own choice, and that's what RBI's principle of having multiple payment systems, multiple payment choices to the consumer. And once these rails are in place, and let's take an example now what you spoke about, the 123 pay. The 123 pay, now, the way UPI has been designed is, today UPI, you can use your own money. Today, which is the savings account, current account, UPI is opened up with the recent regulatory guidelines for the PPI, which is you want to park some prepaid money at somewhere, you can use UPI. And now with the RuPay credit card on UPI, you can use somebody else's money. So it's not necessary. The point with what I'm making is the transition from own money to somebody else's money, the lender's money, will happen very soon, right? Because that will actually drive the consumption-led economy. The credit will drive the consumption in the economy. So once our objective is to, once the channel is made, railroad is made, then it's up to the ecosystem to how do we leverage that, to use it even to supply the credit and help the citizen to make, to transact daily spends using the lending process.
I'm also going to respond on the same question. Yeah. So the thing is this, that when you do a digital transaction, it costs you less. When you do a physical transaction, it's cash, and you think it's costless. But there's a real cost to it. There's a cost of going to a bank, withdrawing money. There are opportunities which you don't get. So in my view, even just the transaction cost of cash is around half a percent of the money. And that's a cost then, only the poor will pay, yeah. Which, you're going to widen the divide. So in fact, a lot of the work in terms of financial inclusion we do is to try and reduce these divides, and so that we can take the entire country along on the journey, give them a way to come up in life, give them more opportunities, and so on.
But if he comes on payments, the chances that he'll get credit, actually. He'll get credit. Whether it's now or later, we'll have to see that. What is the time? But once he's digital, the chances that he'll get credit are very high.
Good. Last question there. The gentleman there, yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name is Abhinav and I'm the founder of Mool. Just a quick question for you, sir. Dilip, what is the status of UPI on credit? How can the startups here apply to be a TPAP or a PSP? And as we move to a regime of credit on UPI, how can we ensure that we're not replicating the kind of interest rates that the credit card regime put on us?
So see, first of all, we can connect and we will figure out how do you get on to that credit bandwagon. It's a very important project for us. So where are we now is the question. So large lenders like HDFC Bank and some of the PSBs are live. You will see a couple of more lenders going live before the end of March. Some of the fintechs are also working on a co-brand arrangement back with the, if I have to take, I keep track on daily basis. So yesterday's spend on RuPay credit card on UPI was close to 2.5 crore, right? We want to go to the daily 100 crore spend. Till now, the large apps are not live, except Paytm. Paytm is the only app live other than the Bheem app. So we are working with the players, and I strongly believe that next few weeks, we are looking at this 2.5 crore daily spends to 100 crore daily spends. That's our target we are working on, and I believe we will achieve this in not few months, few weeks. Once the apps, the supply side, the demand side goes live, I think the lenders will come on board. We are working with Axis to go live this month. We are working with Yes to go live with this month, Yes Bank to go live this month. Kotak is almost ready to go live. So I'm saying there is a good funnel. Some of the PSBs, Canara has gone live. So I believe that we will easily get 10 million customers as a target address market in next few weeks. Once the app goes live, you'll see the huge ramp up on a spends.
And how do we ensure
Actually, I
that
want to cut questions for now. You will connect you to Dilip.
Yeah, we'll connect. We'll
right?
connect
That's-
separately, and you just give mine.
I'll do it. Great.
Yeah.
So Dilip, with that, I want to thank you
Thank
for a very interesting panel, and also I know you have a flight to catch, so
Yes.
so thank you for making time for us.